Georgia and South Carolina. So before we start talking about these guys, Andy Stowe's got a question. Do you think Dylan Bell should be moved to running back permanently for Georgia? Listen, they experimented with him out there a little bit against Ball State. He played running back in high school, some Wildcat quarterback stuff like that. He's over 200 pounds, so probably 6'2", over 200 pounds, is a physical guy, very, very quick. So Kirby Smart said, hey, that's definitely something they're going to keep in their repertoire there that they can pull out at different times, kind of in their bag of tricks. But it all depends on, okay, what's the health, how many receivers they have, what's the health at running back? Will they get another guy out there, healthy? Will Andrew Paul come around and be more healthy at running back? They get Daijun Edwards back this week. So I think you'll see more of Daijun than you will Dylan, but I think you may see Dylan a little bit out there. But let's get into the questions for this game that we have for each team. I'll start with the home team. Can Georgia play consistently for 4 quarters and block better in the run game? Both interior and on the perimeter has not been up to Georgia's standard. Tate Ratledge, the starting right guard for Georgia, he came out and said, hey, we haven't been physical enough. We haven't created enough movement. We haven't opened up enough holes for our running backs, and just have had too many busts, haven't been up to their standard. So also on the perimeter, you got guys like Oscar Delp and Arian Smith out there that are being asked to do more and more perimeter blocking now, with Ladd McConkey out, with Darnell Washington now no longer on this team. It creates a void out there, guys who haven't been as experienced blocking out there on the perimeter, and they need to step up and have more consistency and execution in that as well. Listen, with Monken last year and for the last couple of years, Georgia would utilize the perimeter early and often in games, getting the defense going east and west. And then once they started doing that, they would gash them up the middle with the run game, with the play action over the middle, things of that nature. Get more in between the tackles then after they got that defense running side to side. At times, that has been there with Bobo and this offense in 2023, but they have to be able to block better in space consistently. I think that defense for Georgia, a question for them is, are they going to be able to tackle well early in space? Because Spencer Rattler does not have an offensive line in front of him, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute on our questions for South Carolina. He doesn't have a great offensive line in front of him, so they're going to try to get that ball out quick, whether it's quick game, screens, all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to see, okay, can they tackle well early and then force Dowell Loggins to be less patient? Because taking that short stuff, a lot of times it'll test the patience of an OC. You think, okay, well, we're getting 3 or 4 here, 4 or 5 here, but then everybody wants to start taking the deep shots. Well, guess what? It takes time for those to develop, and that's when that pressure can get to the quarterback. So can Georgia tackle early and force Dowell Loggins' hand when it comes to throwing the ball down the field? Of course, Georgia is a 27.5-point favorite in this one over South Carolina. For South Carolina, does their offensive line show signs of life? Hey, Nathan Klein, we appreciate you coming in, man. South Carolina, does their offense show signs of life? They gave up 9 sacks and 16 tackles for a loss against a UNC defensive front that the next week turned around and didn't get 1 sack against Appalachian State. Not exactly an elite defensive front. Georgia's is an elite defensive front. They have a lot of depth, a lot of guys who have played a lot in college football playoff environment and national championships. And they are like a boa constrictor, okay? They're not necessarily with the penetrating style that Tennessee is, but they just cut down all the space, and before you know it, you can't breathe. That's the style of defense that Georgia has. But having said that, I know that Georgia's not a go get, a bunch of sacks type team. I don't think they may not help but get sacks if Spencer Rattler holds the ball for 3 seconds or more, because that's how bad this South Carolina offensive line has been. They've had key injuries. Jalen Nichols, the starting left guard in the spring, goes down, tears up his knee. Now they've got guys going in there. Case and Henry went down. They've had injuries there. Marquis Anderson is banged up. So it's been a kind of a crapshoot for South Carolina on the offensive line wise. I don't see how they're going to be able to protect Spencer Rattler. But at the very least, they got to be able to slow down this Georgia pass rush and also create some kind of semblance of a run game. Realize this, against North Carolina, South Carolina had -2 yards rushing on the day. I know that accounts for sacks, but -2 yards rushing, and South Carolina only had 108 yards rushing, and some of that came late against Furman. Overall, South Carolina is averaging a paltry 1.5 yards per carry on the season. Okay, 1.5 yards per carry. The carry and Joyner, Juju McDowell, they're not getting it done. They played Mario Anderson and DJ Braswell a little bit later in that game against Furman. Did those guys step up and become RB1? Does that make a little bit of a difference? But still, if you can't get movement, you're not blocking people, you're not able to have that strain there. I don't know that happens very well for South Carolina. And then defensively, can South Carolina limit the explosive plays from Georgia? Because Georgia is going to push the ball down the field more now that it's a conference game. So I'm excited to see, okay, how does that matchup go? South Carolina feels pretty good about their secondary back there. They're getting Nick Amenwari back, but I think this Georgia wide receiving core is one of the more underrated in the country and very, very deep. And I think you're going to see the training wheels off of Carson Beck in this offense in this week. I'd like Georgia to win this one about 38-10. So I think they'll cover on this one. So because I just don't believe that South Carolina is going to be able to protect Spencer Rattler. All right, I got a couple of things here. Andy Stowe says UGA will actually blitz this week. They haven't been doing it yet. Rattler's going to get hard and get hit a lot. Hey, I could see it. Nathan Klein says, personally, I hope Rattler keeps up the good work. Didn't live up to the hype, but he's making a comeback of sorts. Listen, Spencer Rattler has been unbelievable. And I'm telling people, don't be shocked early in this game when he hits a couple of nice throws, because what they're going to do is, like I said, they're going to get the ball out quick. They got big receivers, so it doesn't take long to catch the snap, hitch up one time, and throw a fade down the sideline, aiming in about 20, 25 yards and let a guy have a back shoulder or have a 50-50 ball. And then it'll be incumbent upon Dalen Everett, incumbent upon Kamari Lassiter, incumbent upon Nyland Green, Julio, they call him Julio Humphrey over there for Georgia, Julian Humphrey. Whichever one is in the game at corner, they're going to be tested. And, if South Carolina may hit a couple of those, but I don't think South Carolina can consistently move the ball, and that's why I don't think they'll have success in this matchup. So that is Georgia and South Carolina, guys, on the questions we have for both of them in that matchup.